Going live on YouTube. Good morning, everybody. This is Thankful Thursday. Live on YouTube. This mic is all yours.
Okay, who's going first?
I don't know. Sharon, do you like to go
Going
first?
live on
It doesn't matter. I
YouTube.
can go first. Yeah, I love this lesson.
Okay.
I just put the lesson in the chat with Ken Wapnick's commentary.
Yeah. This lesson is really, they're all beautiful, but this lesson is something that we are.
Yeah.
We are love. That is the essence of the universe. The universe is love. The only thing that's hiding our love is our thoughts, just our thoughts. And this, in my experience, this falls away on its own. You don't really have to do a thing. The way I see it, I've had some shifts lately, and of course I still hear the ego, but my perception has completely changed. And in that, I had nothing to do with it. The Sharon had nothing, the character has nothing to do with this. Absolutely nothing. This is one mind waking up to the truth of who we are. And it's a one awakening. But the person can't wake up because the person's not really there. So what I see in my field right now is this aliveness. There's an aliveness in the space. It just has, everything feels alive. Whether the ego leaves or not is not my concern either, because what is the ego anyway? It's just a belief in separation, and I don't believe in separation anymore. I don't have one belief in separation anymore. We've never been separate. This is a virtual reality. So if I think I'm here 69 years, I'm wrong because there's no time. And what I would say now is I'm in the timelessness. And to say, well, oh boy, how did you do, timelessness, Sharon? Well, it happens by itself, right? And that's where, I sometimes will bring up different teachers that I've had in the past that truly have helped. That was part of my classroom. But the classroom that I'm in now is that I, the one being, the knower, the knowing, knows that none of this is real. And it never was. So it's just perception. But back in the days that Gather was in the beginning when I started, and I used to love this. Holiness created me holy. Kindness created me kind. Helpfulness created me helpful. Perfection created me perfect. Any attribute which is in accord with God as he defines himself is appropriate for use. So look at this. They're not saying the wholeness is what we are. And why is it holy? Because it comes from our creator. Or it's a reflection, right? Of what we have always been, always will be. And the character itself is probably meaningless. Meaningless in the sense that it never was real. And so kindness created me kind. Well, that's one of the things that Ken Wapnick has driven home for all of us. And that is that forget about enlightenment. Who cares? I mean, if you still have a persona, be kind. Be kind. What does that mean? Well, for everyone, it might mean something different, but it's all about what the manual describes, the teachers of God represent. And all of that is what happens as we progress on the path. But I don't ever want to say, well, I did this and I did that, and I studied the course for 20 years, and you can have an awakening. I wouldn't do that to someone. I have too much love for humanity too. Because to me, this is a process that is fully human, fully divine. I don't need to disappear to know that I'm not the character. I'm not the character because the character is a thought. And what is a thought? A thought is an object. What is an object? It can't be real, right? The only reality, which is here right now, is this. And it's very simple. The book itself, to me, is a great book. For the best part of this book to me is the lessons. I mean, I love all of it, really, but the lessons, those first 50 lessons, somehow unwind the mind, right? And so when I see the Christ, I see it everywhere all the time. Do I forget during the day? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I live with another person, right? And he's talking to me and we're talking about something we did in the past. And there you go. I'm back in story. What difference does it really make? I'm here to say, tell a story. Who cares? Of course, we don't want to bring harm to anyone, right? We only want to represent love because that's what we are. We really are the Son of God, which would be part of God, right? And part of God is exactly what Jesus is thought to be. So when Jesus comes in the dream, well, he doesn't come in the dream because we're not in a dream. We're in our mind. That's all we're looking at, our thoughts. And our thoughts are concepts and objects. And there's not one thing here that is reality. But reality itself is the presence of love's awareness. So now, like, non-judgment. Well, do I still judge? I have preferences. That's for darn sure. I sure do. And do I people please? Sometimes. So what? Who's people pleasing? The persona that's people pleasing isn't even there. So what happens when you fall down in the rabbit hole? You just start to laugh. You have to laugh because none of this makes a difference. And I have heard many, many people give directions on how to wake up. And that's because they're coming from their own experience. Well, in my experience, I have been with the spiritual buffet for years, looking at all different teachings, right? Because I'm curious. Coming back to the Course because it's the most loving and vibrational high that I have seen in this mind when I do these lessons, when I sit in the silence, when I'm with the true self. But to think that anyone can bring you home that's outside of you would be impossible. They only can see their own mind. They don't have X-ray vision into what's going on here, but we do. We do. And that's where equality comes in. Only equals are at peace. Only equals are at peace. So seemingly when I do see something, and I do, like I said, have preferences still, I don't excuse that because the character might still have preferences. But the mind that I'm in right now is very pure. And I still have some like I said, preferences. I don't believe in this process. And again, we're in an insane world with insane people. But I think if I were ever going to be a teacher that was getting paid for that in this process, I would never, ever say that I can wake you up, because the only thing that wakes us up is wakefulness, is awareness, is the Holy Spirit. That's it. Somebody outside of you, they're just a reflection of your mind. They're just a projection from your mind. And no one has done anything intentional. It does kind of get rid of judgment when you really think about it. If it's all happening, and it's a happening, That's what I heard years ago from Roger Costello. This is just a happening. Sometimes, I was very curious. Like, I don't know much about the guy that was speaking, Richard Schwartz, on, on John Monday. I couldn't get on. And I do have one of his books, and I like it very much. I love all of it. But remember one thing, everybody's dreaming. So a reality that shows up in someone's mind that we might come back, that we keep going, and all that other stuff, to me, unless I'm experiencing it, I don't know. I don't know, but I do know that only equals are at peace. And with that, who wants to go next?
I will. Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you chose to share on today's lesson. Love created me like itself. And a funny thing happened on the way to the forum this morning. Kind of reminds me of the day 10 years ago when I was just kind of like doing nothing here at my desk. And I heard somebody reading from lesson 14, and they said, and God didn't create cancer, so it's not real. I said, what? It says that in the Course in Miracles. I couldn't believe it. I looked up lesson 14 and paragraph 2 at the very end. That's what it says. Yeah. So this morning I was in the same kind of like I was listening to Prudence playing as I usually do every morning, Ken Wapnick. And then she plays this recording put out by FIP on today's textbook reading, which was very nice. And then same guy does lessons from the workbook, and he did today's lesson 67. And I hear him saying, helpfulness created me helpful. I say, what? That's really inside the course? And, helpfulness created me. And the 4 things that it says here, holiness created me holy. Well, I for some reason, I don't really identify with that. You got to learn that, holiness created me holy. Kindness created me kind. I definitely identify with that. Perfection created me perfect. Well, I don't know if I can identify with that. Well, of course, not the dove is not perfect for sure, but, obviously God's creation, the Holy Son of God is what I am. And that's truly perfect because God is the perfect creator. But the thing that really resonated is helpfulness created me helpful. That italics on page 28. I'm here only to be truly helpful. That happens to be my truth. I don't know if I exude any of the other qualities of the course. Kindness, yes. I sometimes I love gentleness. I don't think I'm always gentle, but helpful, I always am helpful. Always. So I am so glad that Jesus puts that in as the 4 in love created me like itself in lesson 67. Any attribute which is in accord with God as he defines himself. So, so God is truly helpful. Yes, he only wants to help his son. The ego, of course, doesn't see it that way. He thinks, well, I gotta do what God wants me to do, or he ain't gonna like me. No, God loves you exactly the way you are. That's the most helpful thing that anyone can do, is to love someone exactly the way they are and exactly the way they are not. For some reason, I opened up Pam Grout's book, The Course in Miracles Experiment, and I've been talking about it. I sent it to all my children, actually, or some of my children, the ones that were interested in The Course in Miracles. And I heartily recommend it to anyone else, whether you're doing the course or someone who might be interested in the course but not quite ready for the for the Christian theology of the vocabulary in the course. So on lesson 67, she calls it beep, beep. And what do you mean by beep, beep? I mean, isn't love created me like itself? She said, no. Beep, beep is Wile E. Coyote's trying to chase down the roadrunner, and she says he ain't ever gonna chase down and catch the roadrunner. And so she goes on to say, the spiritual world, which the world that most of us can't see, connects us to an unlimited, enormous consciousness with no edges, no boundaries, and no limits. And she mentions that scientists in the last 100 years are focused on what they call the field, the quantum field. And in this quantum field, you do find this enormous consciousness with no edges, no boundaries, no limits. And everything in this non-physical world is cooperative, user-friendly, and win-win. Certainly can't say that about the so-called physical world that you see with your physical eyes that can't see, ears that can't hear, and a brain that doesn't think. No, you have to literally be willing to come from a place within you that is truly helpful, helpful to all. Yeah, even to the ones that don't even seem to want to associate with you or like you, or I'm still helpful to all. And where does that helpful come from? Really, it comes from God. Literally, God created me helpful. And with that, Laurie, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know how helpful you are too.
Well, thank you, Dove. That helpfulness created me helpful. I think you're very helpful. I think you were saying you didn't really connect with that one so much, but it's like, really? You don't?
No, I did. No, I did connect with it.
Oh, you connected with that one. Which was the one you didn't connect with?
Well, holiness and
Holiness.
perfection.
Holiness and perfection. Oh, okay. All right. So sorry about that. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to skip back a little bit and go to lesson 66. That's what the one I thought was today, but I forgot about leap year. And I just want to say I appreciate, Sharon, what you were saying. I can tell you've had the shift, and I love it because I've been going through a little bit of a backsliding, I guess you might call it, if I was Baptist, and feeling like blah, and waking up every morning going, ugh, I really don't want to be here. And I'm not fully depressed. I've never gone back to the full depression that I used to have. But there's this icky gray, just this gray pallor. And I'm not unaware enough to realize that if I got the things I think I want in life, that's going to change that, because it might temporarily say, oh, yeah, now I have something happy I want in life, but I know better than that. I know that it's a basic thing. And when I opened to my happiness and my function are one, it was like, that's it. I have to forgive myself for thinking I am Lori. And our relationship with our personality or our body, I think they go together, is the last holdout. And there's just this little piece of me that it's like, oh, that's right. I'm not this person who has this default mechanism of going to, I hate this world, I want to get the F out. That's not who I am. But when I look at that, it's like, wow, I really do think that's who I am. And I really do think that I've studied A Course in Miracles and for the most part have gotten away from that, but it comes back. Between tragedies, it's like you go along with life and you're fine and you're keeping your head above water. You might even be happy, but then a tragedy is going to strike and then you're going to go down again. And then you'll come back up again and be fine. And I was looking at that thought system inside me this morning going, that's a perfect ego thought system. Seek, but do not find. And even if you think you find, it's only temporary and you're going to go back down. So in our lesson today, Love Created Me Like Itself, I was really happy to hear both of you talking about, yes, that is our true nature. And I do that all the time. Affirmations of, I am the love of God. I am the compassion of God. I am the kindness of God. And then I know what you're saying, Sharon, because the blocks, the personality blocks fall away and you just know it and you feel it. And I have been there. Well, it is, I mean, we're all really truly there because it is our true nature. But often this gray pallor covers over it. And I can't even blame the weather right now because it's been so sunny this winter time. It's been great. I love it. I have loved this winter that's been very mild. And so we can be upset about climate change, but this winter I'm like really happy about climate change. Anyway, getting to this thing of we will not become hopelessly involved in defining happiness and determining the means for achieving it. We will not indulge the ego by listening to its attacks on truth. That helps me so much. I am so grateful for this course because without it, I would be either dead or institutionalized or zombified on medication or just an angry, raging bitch. One of the above. But for the most part, I'm pretty peaceful because of our true nature that we share. And Sharon, something also that you said about this is not Sharon doing it. This is the one mind waking up. That is so helpful because if we get into, I'm trying so hard to wake up. Well, of course, that's ego trying to keep us stuck in the ego thought system because, as you said, the ego personality cannot wake up and no one can do it for you. It's an awareness of your true nature. And so this morning I was dealing with this gray pallor, like just this heavy gray fog. It's like, I don't like this. And some thought systems talk about just allowing yourself to feel the feelings and letting them pass through without attaching a story to them. And they say that they won't hang on if you don't attach a story to them and you just see them as energy floating through. That has never worked for me. I don't necessarily believe that. Sometimes it seems to happen where if I just let the energy flow through, it goes by, but it doesn't seem to be replaced with our true nature. Like lesson 91, it talks about we need something to substitute for what we thought we were. And it goes into all these definitions of the light in me is kind and loving and whole, just like lesson 67. And that's always what I've needed. The Eastern way of just allowing without the Western way of replacing it with something tangible just doesn't work. So when I go to, oh, that's right, I am as God created me. I am not this body. I am free. I am still as love created me. Then it gets me right back into truth. But then again, that sounds like I'm talking about me needing to get into truth, and that's an ego identification in itself. So anyway, I'm just grateful to be here. I always know that the fog lifts. It's kind of like a foggy morning and fog will lift, but then the next morning fog comes back. And that's the ego idea. That's not who we really are. That's not the truth of our being. Thank you, God. Thank you, life. Thank you for what we are created as love. So I'm going to turn this back over to you, Sharon.
Thanks, Lori. You know, it's funny. I could be in this spot right now, right? Right here, right now. And who knows? And who knows what can be next, right? Because I'm not in charge. You know, this one mind's waking up. This oneness is waking up. So none of us really know. And when we have different energies coming up, without the narrator, they're just energies. But I too have issues around that, Lori. I also get stuck in, and what that is memory. The mind's remembering a certain feeling we had and then saying, well, I must be this, I must be that. And that is normal part of the process. Not only is it a normal part of the process, but it doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, whatever's going on with me right now doesn't mean that I still don't have preferences. And it doesn't mean that, and that's okay. Because you see, when you do have this awakening, it's the higher ego. You're still in egoic because you're in the mind. You're in a body. If you're out of the body, then okay. Other than that, I have heard, I don't know, somebody wrote a book once about the fact that they didn't see a world anymore. And to me, all of that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The laughter is what matters. The character can laugh all at once because this whole thing is very silly. Because ego, first of all, starts this process with us, right? And that would be the lower ego, the sin, guilt, and hate that we're hiding. Because we have, the way I see it, I appeared a lot of times to have a nice ego. But if somebody did something to me that I didn't like, I'm quite sure that underneath all that was as the energies were rather dark, So to say anything about, being special for anything that happens here, that's also a problem because, I have woken up where it's been, gray and feeling as though that I'm, not wanting to be here. I've had all that because these are just energies. That's all it is. There's nothing here but energy. In fact, we talk about God as if we really know what that is. Well, the only thing we know that is love. This love that I feel is it's subtle. It's not like, to me, it's not like bells and whistles. The thing that I do see, though, a lot of times is to be a teacher and getting paid for it can actually be a problem because how can you let go of specialness? Specialness is all part of this process. So, because you're not special, there's one. I mean, Jesus in the Course makes it very clear that there's just oneness here. And all of us are in different parts of the mind, but we are joined in mind, not in the world. And as far as saying about the fact that Sharon did nothing, I feel that that's important. I wish everyone would say the truth when they are teaching, but I really believe that the ego stays in there because of the specialness and says, well, yeah, just follow me. And I'm quite sure they come from a wonderful place where they believe it helped them. And since they're one mind, it could help them, me too. But the way I see it is we all have an individual curriculum. And if anything, I did not have an easy curriculum. My curriculum was rather challenging. It was all about special love and special hate. And I'm also quite sure most of us have had similar kinds of things, right? Because we're all in this together, as Dove said. And, when Lori was talking about Dove, I would say, Dove, that's one of your greatest things is how helpful you are. And the other thing is the humility you have too, Dove, is just magnificent. I love your humility. And I love how you have everyone in this together. And you're not saying, well, she's not listening to guidance or she's not this or she. No, all of that is not helpful. That's just more, I guess, minutia, paying attention to little things that absolutely mean nothing. Right-mindedness, we all know what that is. What would the right mind say right here, right now? It's just this. It's just this space. It's just this present moment. And that's it. That's how simple it is. Now, I had like a love-hate relationship with the world. I loved people. That was just something that was in me from, well, actually, it didn't really happen until I was in junior high, which is kind of weird. That's usually a time that's hard for people. But there was something in me that saw innocence always. I grew up in a volatile home, and the volatility behind that, I could feel the love, right? Because that's what's there, the veil of all our obstacles, of all our judgments, of all our hate, of all our sin. That's the thing that's putting us in a place that we don't want to be in, because we're not that. But the most important part of this is we're not the person. And I have listened to Dove speak about Keith Kavanaugh. I found Keith when he first went on. I was on Facebook and I saw that Kate Greaves was introducing something that he had posted. And in my heart, and again, comparisons still come up, but he's the most outstanding course teacher I had ever listened to. Clear, honest. He'll say he falls back through the day, as I do. Of course I do. I don't know if everyone does, and I don't really care. But I do know my life is different now. And the unfolding of this one's dream was challenging. I mean, it's very difficult to come up with the obstacles, but there was something here in me that always knew I'd be okay. And that's because love is here. That's the only thing that has ever worked for me and everyone else. But the most important thing is to love yourself unconditionally. How you show up in this dream, is important because
Sharon?
did I just stop talking? Oh, I must have done something. Okay. Well, okay. That just happened automatically. All right. I'm going to pass it over to you, Dove. I was shutting my eyes and talking. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I've been looking at the idea that the course says, listen, you can take this path, and the only reason for taking this path rather than some other paths, and it says there are hundreds of paths, and they all lead to the same place. And then he says the only reason for taking this path is that it saves time. And saving time is very helpful. I mean, that's the way I see it. Saving time is very helpful. And I kind of go back to when I first got into the course way back, like in the 70s, literally. But I didn't start teaching until January 1, 1980, when someone said, why don't we start a Course in Miracles group in my home in Greenwich Village? And Dove, why don't you lead the group? And I remember at the time, my mind said, you can't do that. You're only halfway through the lesson book, the workbook, and you never even opened the text. How could you lead the group? But out of my mouth, since I had developed some qualities such as not listening to the ego, because I had done S prior to the course, and I became a guest seminar leader there at S. And a guest seminar leader is someone who has to stand before people who want to know about S and doesn't want to hear the ego, wants to hear the spirit rather than the material. So when I was asked to lead a group, I said, okay, I'll do it. That's what came out. And of course, John Mundy was at my very first meeting, because it was at his home on New Year's Eve that that question popped up. And I remember opening up the textbook and I took one look at the 50 miracle principles. I said, oh, well, let's start with chapter 1. He said, no, 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 no. Let's do the 50 miracle principles. And that's what we did on that particular night, the first night of the group. But after a couple of years of this group going on, it became obvious that people thought that I knew something that they didn't know. And I think the part of me that was helpful is the part of me that said, well, you know, instead of you asking me these questions and thinking I have an answer that you don't have, why don't each of us take our place as a moderator and lead the group for an evening? And we did that for a couple of years. And the people that asked all the questions, people that thought that I knew something that they didn't know, they became teachers of other teachers. They moved on very quickly. And I always tell that story of one of the guys who was a rear admiral in the Navy, who was one of the guys who asked all the questions. He invited me to the United Nations about 3-4 years later, and he invited me into this room, and there's like this long table with 50 countries, and every one of the people from the countries had a copy of the Blue Book right in front of them, and they were all reading, and Bob O'Donnell was leading the group. So I found that it was helpful to ask people, instead of listening to me, why not start teaching? And that's how ACIM gathered. And prior to that, it was on AOL. We actually called it the Teachers of God. And out of that, Belinda Vuj, and in those days on AOL, there was no microphone, no nothing. It was just a whiteboard, and everyone took their turn as a teacher. And I was teaching for 3 years along with a lot of other people. And Belinda Vujovic, who took everything that I wrote down, she copied and pasted and turned it into a book, Into Oneness. And I did offer anyone who liked a copy of Into Oneness to contact me. The only one who did contact me, by the way, was Audrey. And Audrey, I sent her the book, even though she's in Canada. I found it was a little bit, I'll use the word easier or cheaper, to have Amazon send it to her directly in Canada, because when I went to the post office, they said, oh, it'll cost you $24 to send the book priority. No. Just book rate is $24. Priority is $40. And I send everything here in the United States priority mail. So I had Amazon do it. It was actually cheaper. And she just sent me a letter today. And if you see the book, the book's cover was an illustration. I don't know if you can see it. The book's cover was an illustration done by Belinda's brother, who is a graphic designer. And Audrey took one look at the book cover and she said, do you mind if I color it in with colors? I said, no, you can do anything you want. So I guess we'll hear from Audrey as she starts coloring Into Oneness. And again, Into Oneness is not a book you read from cover to cover. It's literally, since I did not, even though the words came through my mouth, as anyone who knows and who's teaching A Course in Miracles, whether it's here at ACIM Gather or anywhere, it's Holy Spirit speaking to you and through you. As he says, take your place among the teachers, lesson 154. And then 155 says, let me step back and let him lead the way, So it's Spirit speaking to me and through me. So she took the cream of what she liked. She didn't take everything I did for 3 years, and she just took quips, like I just opened to page 202. And you can see there's only a few words on each page. And let's see, 202 says, everyone here sees a teacher in each and every one here. That's true. We are all blessed. That's true. Teachers are all around us. That's true. It's for us to see them, so seek. And then on the other page, 203, because that's what I always say is our guidance is whenever you ask for guidance, you open up the book and whatever it says on the left side and the right side. And 203 says, we do meet our unexpected teacher in this world in many places. And sometimes it's easy to see the Christ in them. And sometimes our teacher looks a lot like Judas. In both cases, it's the same, capital S. It's our function to restore the sonship as whole, capital WHOLE. And all are given to us to include, and when we finally do, the love that the Course does not teach is us. That's a perfect lesson for today's perfect reading guidance for today's lesson number 67. Love created me like itself. Yeah. So to see everyone's a teacher. You know, I don't care what his name is. He could be Donald. It could be Bill. They're all teachers. You know. Yeah. Even Vladimir. You got to laugh. You really simply got to laugh. And it's really a joke. If you're not laughing at this world, that's the most helpful thing you can really do. Truly. Over to you, Laurie.
Thanks, Dove. I love that story about the United Nations. And I've never heard that one before. And hearing about how it all started on New Year's Eve with John Mundy. I mean, I knew somewhat about that, but I've always appreciated your thing about the total equality of God's sons. And what you had said, Sharon, echoing Karen Parente, about only equals can be at peace. Only equals can be at peace. And this whole equality theme is, it's just always there. And I heard you say something about in special relationships, it's all about inequality. I just feel grateful. So grateful for the awareness that I have now. And even yesterday, it was interesting. I've been looking at certain beliefs that seem to be stuck way down deep in there. And one showed up yesterday that I didn't even know was still there. And it was about worthiness. And oh, I know what it was. I mean, it's come in and out, in and out, in and out. And you know how we have awareness of issues and then we forget about it, then we have it again, and then we forget about it until it finally comes up to be healed. And the awareness was, I still think I'm Lori, who's a therapist and who teaches A Course in Miracles. And it's like, I've let go of that identity a lot, but there it was again in this moment where I was feeling ashamed of myself. And there it was, you're not a very good teacher. You're not a very good therapist and all this. And I'm like, whoa, look at that. That is still there. And part of me says, maybe it will be there for the rest of my life, but it won't come up to be an issue, or it won't come up to snag me like a fish hook. Because the ego thought system is always going to be there. And it's just a matter of, do we see it and then let it blow by? But this was hooked and I could feel it. And I had to look at it and release it and remind myself, oh, I'm not even Lori. No one's even here. There is no teacher of God. There is no Course in Miracles. There's nothing out there. And then I felt relieved and felt whole again. So you're writing in the chat board here. Dove, you wrote, the most valuable people in any organization are the ones that do whatever they can to make other people successful, and they don't care who gets the credit. I love that. That's awesome. That's what you do, Dove.
Thank
so going with this love created me like itself and looking at Ken's commentary, I'll read. from paragraph 5, lines 1 to 2. It will be particularly helpful today to practice the idea for the day as often as you can. You need to hear the truth about yourself as frequently as possible because your mind is so preoccupied with false self-images. And isn't that all of us? Our minds are so preoccupied with what we think we are, who we think we are, what our identity is. And it's been the loosening of that and the recognition that I am as God created me. That's the only thing that has ever healed me. It doesn't matter what the issue is. As lesson 140 says, only salvation can be said to cure. So when you recognize who you really are, that is the only cure. And when I work with clients, I'm always bringing them back to that. It doesn't matter if even an external relationship seems to be healed. The real healing is your identity. So Ken says, in this one sentence of your mind is so preoccupied with false self-images, we find a wonderful juxtaposition of both halves of our split minds and the basic theme of A Course in Miracles. We must realize how preoccupied we are with our false self-images or self-concepts. These might include, I am right, I am holy because I am right, I am an individual, I am special, I know what is in my best interests. We must become aware of our preoccupation with these self-images. Otherwise, we will never know there is something we can choose between. Jesus therefore tells us, in the workbook especially, I will remind you frequently of who you really are, so you can see you have a choice between the glorious self of Christ and the shabby one you made as a replacement. It is our awareness of the ability to choose between two mutually exclusive self-concepts that allows us in the end to make the choice that is the end. Bringing us to this awareness is the function of the miracle. So I love that. They're mutually exclusive. It's one or the other. Like lesson 93, it says all the self-concepts you made up of how you're good, how you're bad, this little small, false, separate self, it's not good or bad. It's simply nothing. And I am as God created me. And so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Sharon.
Thanks, Lori. That was beautiful. You know, I love what Dove wrote here. The most valuable people in any organization are the ones that do whatever they can to make other people successful, and they don't care who gets the credit. This brings up, and it is true, Lori, Dove is like that. He is like that. He's definitely a way shower for sure. Anyway, what I was thinking is years ago when I started the 12 steps, a friend of mine said to me, you know, that he cleaned a driveway, okay, snow off during the street. He was doing that as like a spiritual activity, just to clean everybody's driveway and then just leave and never let the person know that he did it. And that's really like the tools that help the most, because if we focus on the good in all, of course, we can't see the good in all if we don't have it in us, right? Because that's just how this works. But when we focus on how wonderful others are, that pulls the vibration higher. That's just the way consciousness just goes higher up on, you know, on the scale, in the sense that we feel lighter, right? Because this brings me back to a place when I was a young girl, my mother would say, if you want to be happy, get out of yourself. Now, I tend to be a little, Sharon, the character tends to be codependent, and that's where the issues are a problem, because you see, the ego likes it when we focus on the hurt in people, right? Because then if we focus on the hurt in people, we stay in the ego. But that's not where I'm at anymore. I focus on what everyone does that's absolutely wonderful. Why do I do that? I have always been that way. I've always been a cheerleader for others, but I think there was always that in me that knew that the more I was focused, especially with children. I mean, teaching children, I just think that everything they do is magical because it is. I mean, really just you're like, we're so written down with these thoughts all day long about this and that and who did this and what happened. And there's so much good here, even in this world. How do I see that? Because if you focus on that, that's what you see, because our attention is what drives this process. Putting your attention on negative things will bring negative results. And this has been something that I saw, and don't get me wrong, I can be very negative at times too. I'm like everyone else, but I see it and feel it. It's a different energy. So my goal is to see everyone as the Christ, everyone happy, everyone doing the best they can. And when they might seemingly seem angry or sad, I'll be there for them too, because that's just a thought that came into a person's mind. They're still beautiful. Well, thoughts are not owned by anyone. These thoughts are in consciousness, and if minds are joined, we are getting other people's thoughts all the time. It's not necessarily, our neurosis isn't necessarily ours. It's a neurotic thought system. So today, as you know, I'm going to turn it over to Dov now, but if you look at this lesson that Ken 67, he writes so much because what he's driving home basically is that when we see another, we see ourselves. So let's see everyone as being magical and perfect, right? And you don't need to look at the persona or the person's what they look like, because the ego always has reactions. And just like what Lori said, and I love her honesty, don't you? Her honesty is so beautiful. But it is true that if we focus only on things that are positive, what do you think happens then? Now, we're not always in control of that. We're never really, because if we're ridden down in depression, which I've had quite a few of them, it can be hard. But those are the contrasts. Those are the periods that you're really getting to the root of the ego thought system. So nothing can hurt you here. It's just these emotions that we take seriously. So love created me like itself. Let's walk away today as love and be love unconditionally. Over to you, Doug.
Over to me, yes. Thank you so much. And thanks, Lori and Sharon and all for sharing your loving thoughts. As I'm sitting here, also, I'm thinking of Lynn talking about helpful people, and Lynn is so helpful to all, and she does it with style. I mean, she really has style, which of course everyone loves. That her always smiling, loving, sharing style, and that's really what Gather has really become, a place where we really do share and help each other kind of get to the next rung on the ladder. Somehow when this topic came up, I was thinking of the thought, which I originally thought it came from Ireland, but apparently it doesn't. God helps those who help themselves is an old thing that actually comes from back in the 17th century and probably originated in Greece, according to when you look it up on Google. But Gather is that kind of a place where we say, everyone's invited, all are invited equally to take a place among the teachers, and that's the fastest way to begin to experience what the course is really talking about, because the course's concepts, and he'll tell you, close the book already, you can't find yourself in a book. Books are concepts, symbols, words. You're not concepts. So you have to begin to experience what it is without thinking that someone knows something that you don't know, which obviously is inequality. And you don't want to go in that direction. So Gather, which started a long, long time ago, and prior to Gather, I just wrote that story to Audrey. Audrey happens to be in the room now. I didn't know until I just looked. But I wrote in the room that we started a long time ago before Pal Talk on AOL, which was the first place that people could actually meet. And we started meeting in 98 and 99 before the turn of the century. In the last century, we met on the internet. So and we called it the Teachers of God. And you can only get 24 people in a room. And we did say, if you want to be in this room, you got to take your place among the teachers and take your turn to teach, which was something that I had picked up a long time ago, back in 1980. So the idea of sharing the wealth is really sharing the experience of knowing that you are here. I and spirit are one. I will step back and spirit will step forward and do the sharing. I'm not the one who's actually, Dove is, Dove may know the names of some lessons and things like that, but the one who's sharing always is really spirit, which is why I say I'm not the author of this book, because everything in this book really came to me and through me from spirit. Because by the years that that book came out, I was already doing the course about 25 years already, and well, about 22, 23 years. And so I realized that I'm not the doer. When you realize you're not the doer, you are the most helpful thing that you can do, because you're not doing for yourself. It's everyone is sharing together this oneness, this equality. I think I'll shut up and turn the mic over to you, Lori.
Okay, we only have a couple minutes. So if we go with this lesson, love created me like itself, where it says, holiness created me holy, kindness created me kind, helpfulness created me helpful, perfection created me perfect. If you think for a minute, what quality would you like to have that you think that you don't have? And I'm sure we can all come up with something. Oh, I wish I was more of this. Well, you are. Compassion created you compassionate. Kindness created you kind. Whatever it is that you think that you want that you don't have, affirm it. Say that you do have it. And when you said the thing about the snow shoveling, Sharon, I was thinking of another metaphor with snow shoveling, where my unity minister said that using a denial before using an affirmation is like shoveling the snow out of your driveway, and then so you can drive the car through. Well, often denials are helpful, because if you say, God created me compassionate, or compassion created me compassionate, inside your craw, you go, but I'm not. And look at all the ways I haven't been. But if you say a denial, which is a statement denying the ego thought system, such as the past doesn't even matter, or I'm not even that person that did those things, compassion created me compassionate, then it's like the affirmation will sink in more deeply. So I love using denials before affirmations, because they just seem to work really, really well. And they, like Zulma just wrote in the board, deny the denial of truth. And then they do sink in. And like this lesson says, you need to be reminded 1,000,000 times of what you really are. And then it works, because you feel it and you know it, because it is true. Okay, so I'm turning it over. I know it's Zulma's time. So thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Dove. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. Thank you all. Blessings. God bless.
You guys, all